And we are live. Welcome, everybody, to Spirit Reflections. My name is Fred Gouveia, and we are here in New York City at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The moment that the entire city goes out the windows and claps and screams in gratitude for all the people in the front lines, the doctors, the nurses. So if you're hearing this banging of pans and screams and claps, we're okay. It's just a beautiful show of humanity and gratitude that is washing over the island of Manhattan, and we catch a ride in this wave of positivity here. To welcome our guest tonight, I am so thrilled to have Andrea Kogan, PhD from São Paulo. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you so much. It is my pleasure. And I miss New York so much. And I am so happy to be here in New York with you just a little bit.
Little bit, yeah.
Just a little bit.
In your heart, right? I think you're in your heart, you never left New York, right?
No, never. Yeah. And it's one thing that I say about New York is that when we leave Brazil and then we go to the United States, there are so many things that we have to go through, customs and immigration and everything. And New York is the only place that I feel that I leave Brazil and then I wake up and then I am in New York. I don't feel the bureaucracy, I just feel that I woke up at home.
Nice. Well, Your soul is here with us. And for those of you that don't know about Andrea, Andrea has a PhD in religious studies from the Pontifical Catholic University of São Paulo. She's author of the book, in Portuguese, it's titled Espiritismo Judaico, which translates to either Jewish Spiritism or Spiritism in Judaism.
Perfect, yeah.
And the research that she does are in Brazilian religious syncretism, and contemporary Judaism. And I met Andrea a year ago when she gave an interview to Pondé, who is a wonderful philosopher, scholar, very famous in Brazil. Mm-hmm. And basically the title read, Does Judaism Believe in Reincarnation? Yeah. Interview with Andrea, who wrote Jewish Spiritism. Like, who is this woman? I got to talk to her right now.
Who is this crazy girl?
So, Andrea, tell us about your personal journey first, and then we'll talk about the work that you've been doing lately.
Sure. Well, to be honest with you, as we talked like a couple of weeks ago when we talked for the first time, I told you that I am not a religious person.
Right.
Well, what I mean is that I've watched the video and I've many interviews, and the interviews are so great because the spiritual journeys of the people that you interviewed are so nice and so, I don't know, they are so touching. And my spiritual journey, and my journey is not spiritual at all. It's just academic. And you said, no, you have to tell the people that. So what happened is that, Fred, I'm going to try to be very concise here because there are many things that we can talk about.
Yep.
And to be honest with you, it started like more than 30 years ago when I was a teenager. I am 46 now. Thank you.
You look great. Awesome.
Okay, thank you. I'm 46, but when I was like 14, 15, I don't know exactly the time. I always tell the story, but it's nice to tell here again to a different public, to a different audience. When I was 14 or 15, there was a book at home. I don't know how it got home. Well, I know that my father had a friend, and then his friend was called Davi Muscati. And he had a terrible experience because he lost a son who was 19 years old. He had an anaphylactic shock, how do you say in English? Anaphylaxis.
Anaphylactic shock, yeah.
Anaphylactic shock when he used the nasal drops. And then he had an anaphylactic shock when he was like 19. And then Roberto died, and the family was completely desperate, as families, of course, are when something like that happened. And then they went to Chico Xavier, who is the most famous medium psychic in Brazil, and I think all over the world. Chico is the contemporary. He died in 2002. And then Chico psychographed, we say automated, written that. Well, he
channeled, automatic writing.
These are automatic writing, yes. he wrote 22 letters from Roberto. And the father and all the family transformed these letters into a book. And then the book is called Quando se pretende falar de vida, when one wishes to talk about life, when one intends to talk about life.
Which is available in Portuguese for those that speak Portuguese. And I put the Amazon link right here in the comments if you'd like to purchase a copy of this book.
Great. Yeah. And then I read the book, and it instantly, I felt like, well, we are Jewish, and I've never heard about it. What is Chico Xavier? But there is a big difference when we talk about secular Jews and Orthodox Jews,
right.
and we have to stop and these kind of stereotypes, Fred.
Right. Yes.
They are misconceptions about Judaism, and so I was a secular Jew. I am a secular Jew. I'm not Orthodox. I'm not modern Orthodox. But the people that live in Brazil, the Jews that live here in Brazil that are secular, they are much affected with all kinds of influences from other religions, not only in Brazil, but in the United States and everything. You know, you are composed of the people that you are around, of the beliefs that you are around of. So it's it's not only Jews. So I started reading when I was that teenager. I started reading about Spiritism and books, but it was like just for fun. And we always hear things about, oh, there is a psychic that says that, there is a medium that says that. And we hear lots and lots of stories connected to this kind of things. And of course, in Brazil, it is very common to know about Kardecist Spiritism. Everybody knows that. It's just like something that is all around you. There are millions of people here. So
and it's interesting that you mentioned the word Kardecist Spiritism, meaning Spiritism coming from Kardec, because the word is also used or misused, depending on your point of view, to also describe Afro-Brazilian religions like Umbanda and Candomblé, right? So, which I think is something that, as you started this work, you told me, you realized that you need to break down your research and dedicate a whole book just on Judaism and Afro-Brazilian religion.
This is going to happen. This is going to happen very soon, I hope. And then, I studied English and Portuguese when I was at the university. I stopped reading those kinds of things. Well, when I was like 30-something, like 20 years later than that, I said, well, I want to go back and study why Brazilian Jews have different kinds of beliefs than their own, why they believe in other things, and why they go to spiritist centers, and why and everything. And it was in my head, and I read a book that just changed my life that is called The Jew in the Lotus.
The Jew in the Lotus, wow.
Yes, that is by Professor Roger Kamenetz. And he's a professor from the university, I think it's from New Orleans. And he studied, it's a very interesting book. I think everybody should read that. Everybody that is interested in that, of course. And he studied all kinds of connection between Judaism and Buddhism. And in the United States with numbers, he went to Tibet, he talked to the Dalai Lama and everything. And then I said to myself, I thought at the time when I read that like 15 years ago, I don't know, I don't remember. I said, why? There is a connection here in Brazil with that, of course, not with Buddhism, but with Spiritism. And nobody has ever talked about it. And I started researching that and talking to people and everything. And then I went to PUC, to the university, to the Pontifical Catholic University of São Paulo, that I knew that there was a post-graduation course, a PhD course that is religious. In Brazil, we say religious sciences, but it's religious studies. And then I wanted to study with the person that I already knew, that is called Luiz Felipe Pondé. That is, in my opinion, it's one of the best scholars of Judaism and philosophy in Brazil.
Brilliant mind.
And then it was in the 2011, 2012, more or less. I called him. No, I sent him an email and said, I want to talk to you about this project, and I want to know from you that if you are interested in being my advisor, And he said, yeah, come here. We have, and I remember this email, Fred, because he said, I have 15 or 20 minutes to talk to you. So be ready.
Be
and
quick.
I said, okay. And I said, okay. And then I went, and then we met at a coffee shop inside the university. And then I said, this, I'm very practical. So I just went with the project and everything. And then we talked like for more than an hour because
Nice.
he was like very, he was into the project a lot. And then we started the course, the post-graduation course. And then my PhD I got 4 years later. And here I am.
So through the course of your PhD, it is the 4 years that you did the field research where you actually went to several Spiritist centers and several houses of Jewish people that did some kind of practice in Spiritism,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah, I think it was more than 4 years because, of course, the PhD programs in Brazil, they have a law. You have to study the subjects and everything related to that, work on your thesis. It's called the thesis here in Brazil. The United States, I think it's dissertation. Here we say a thesis, that it has to be something new that nobody has studied before. And then there is a deadline. So you have to have that by 4 years top.
Right.
Oh, you can have for more like one more semester and everything.
Right.
So, but it's between 3 and 4 years. But okay. And then, but I started before that, Fred, because I was interested in that before. So I started talking to people and going to the houses even before being in the program itself. Like a student from the university.
I think since we only have a limited time here with you, is there anything in this 4 or 5 plus years in immersing in this world that stands out in your mind, that is surprising or that captivated you, or impressed you, or that you didn't realize, a new discovery that maybe is cool to share here?
Yeah, I have discovered, to be honest with you, when I say that I am not a spiritual person, I don't have any kind of psychic abilities, I don't have any intuition. Okay, people say, oh, Andrea, it's impossible. Everybody has the kind of psychic ability or an intuition. I said, I haven't discovered mine yet. I don't know. I don't have this kind of women's
intuition.
Intuition. No, I don't have any kind of this. But okay.
I'm sure you do, but okay.
Yeah, that's what people say. And I say, okay, one day I'll find out. But Fred, you know what I say is that when you start studying something and you know that you are going to be with this something for 4 years or more, you can't be masochistic. Because you have to study something that you really enjoy, that you really love, that you're going to be surprised, that you're going to be fulfilled. Because, come on, it's something that is going to take part of your life for 4 years.
And every single week you were doing research in some place, right?
Every single week for more than 4 years. So it has to be something that you are really involved with, that you really enjoy, that you really like to talk to people, and you are surprised all the time. Because if it's something like, okay, I'm going to read one more book, okay, I'm going to talk to one more person. No, it's something that has to fascinate you. It's something that has to you know.
One thing you told me when we spoke is that you did a lecture in an organization of Brazilian, a Spiritist Medical Association, I believe, ABRAP?
Psychologist.
So a Brazilian Spiritist Psychologist Association.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of your talk on this topic, Spiritism and Judaism, or Judaism and Spiritism, or Spiritism and Judaism, however we want to call it in English, you're literally escorted out by security guards, but for a good reason, because everybody wanted to go and talk to you afterwards, because their jaws dropped at what you presented. So
because what happens is that what is happening here is the first time that it's happening this way. What I mean is that when I go to the US, I always have to talk about Spiritism more than Judaism.
Right.
Because they don't know what Spiritism is, especially in academic and scholar environments.
Right.
Here in Brazil, I have to talk more about Judaism because people are a lot more familiar with Spiritism. And when I went to this conference, it was a national conference of Spiritist psychologists who are Spiritists. I don't know. There was a name. And I talked to people that are mostly spirits, like 90%, and they have never heard anything similar to what I was saying. Like, what is Spiritism? And I talk not only about the book, but about my conferences and my interviews and examples and real examples of things that are happening or that happened to me personally during the interviews. And they were fascinated by that. And they wanted to talk to me or they wanted to give me a hug. And when I came down the stage, there were like 20 people. And then they wanted to talk, they wanted to kiss, they wanted to give me the book, because the book, I was going to sign the books, to autograph the books outside the conference room. And they didn't want me to get there because they wanted to talk to me first, because they wanted to share their experiences. This is something very important, Fred. Every time I am in a conference, lecture, interview, and everything, I have to stay like an hour after it finishes, because people want to talk and want to share their experiences.
Because it's very intriguing for a person from the vantage point of myself, for example. I'm not Jewish. I've discovered Spiritism more than 20 years ago. I like to read all kinds of books, but I identify myself more closely currently with Spiritism, where it is a religion or a philosophy or a science, however you want to call it, or a little bit of the three, that originated from talking with dead people.
Yeah.
And Judaism prohibits that.
Yeah.
So how do you bring those two worlds together?
Do you know that one of the most interesting things that I can say to you is that you have to read this book here.
Does the Soul Survive? Okay, let's put it in the comments.
Yeah, please. Does the Soul Survive? A Jewish Journey to Believe in Afterlife, Past Lives. And this is from a rabbi from Los Angeles. He is called Rabbi Eli Spitz. He's a rabbi. And exactly this question that you are asking me was the question that he thought about all his life. He said, why? Why are people so connected to that? Because in Judaism, we don't know, we don't believe in that, blah, 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 blah. And then Fred, he said, well, I'm going to research that. One thing that is very important to say before I just comment this is that in Judaism, I don't know if you have heard this joke, but it's absolutely true. If you have two men, you are going to have three different opinions.
Yes, I've heard that.
So it's true. It's absolutely true, okay? So there isn't any, just like in Judaism, you have to believe in that. You can't believe in this.
Right.
Okay, so there are many roads that you can travel.
Right.
So there are many rabbis that you can talk to, and they are going to have multiple points of view. Okay.
Just like any world religion has many ramifications and traditions within it, right?
Kind of, because in Catholicism there is a pope.
Right. An ultimate authority figure. Right.
There isn't any in Judaism. There isn't this ultimate authority figure, like you said that. Well, and then the rabbi, he divided the book according to the topics that he researched. Okay? And then I'm going to tell you exactly what you said. Near-death experiences, survival of the soul according to Judaism's views, what happens after I die, past life regression, reincarnation, mediums, psychic gifts of a medium, discrepancies. And after that, the appendix, he writes about Torah and immortality of the soul, a hot debate, because there are no conclusions.
Right.
He just puts the facts, and then you have to weigh, and then you have to see what you're going to believe or not, you know?
Right.
So there are no like solid answers like, okay, this is going to happen when you die in Judaism. You can believe in that, but you cannot believe in that.
So there isn't a set of dogmas for the afterlife period of Judaism. Okay.
And for example, there is Kabbalah, and one of the most not famous, but I think there is a book that is available in Portuguese, and this book, by the way, was translated into Portuguese last year. Okay, so it's available.
Good to
if
know.
People are curious about it. There is a book called Reincarnation and Judaism: The Journey of the Soul, by a rabbi from Brooklyn, and then he talks about what is reincarnation in Judaism, according to his point of view, according to his belief, according to his mystical, Kabbalistic approaches, you know?
Okay.
But it's one thing. If you talk to another rabbi, if you talk to another kind of Jew, you know, modern Orthodox or whatever kind of Orthodox he may be, you're going to have a different answer.
I'm putting the book that you mentioned, Reincarnation in Judaism, The Journey of the Soul by Dov Der Pinson.
Exactly.
Awesome.
There is I have this in Portuguese. This one is I have in Portuguese here.
Awesome. So in your 4 years studying Spiritism and the Spiritist practices, what was the thing that came up more and more constantly from the point of view of the Jewish community, and why they make that bridge into Spiritism?
Good question. I think the most common thing is suffering.
Suffering.
Looking for comfort when there is a problem.
The problem being death, right?
Exactly. But death is like the ultimate grief, the ultimate problem. But sometimes not only death, Freddy, but bankruptcy.
Right.
A social problem, a divorce, or something, a serious disease. So people, when they are terrified of something, and we are seeing this now during this pandemic, they seek for comfort. They look for where I need some words, I need something to comfort me. And sometimes in Judaism, they don't have these answers. So in Spiritism, it's quicker. You can go to a meeting and then you can get an answer from a spirit. You can answer from I don't know, in Umbanda, from the Preto Velho, and you can have your problem, from a deity. You can, not your problem solved, exactly, but you are going to have your soul comforted.
Do you find the same movement happens here in North America, as you mentioned in your book, that a lot of the Jews look for that comfort in Buddhism, for example? Is that like
I think it's not the same.
Okay.
I think it's not the same idea. I think Buddhism, Freddy, it's a kind of a different thing. I think it's a kind of, they look for like different practices, like meditation,
going inward more.
Yeah, exactly. And then in Brazilian Spiritism and all other African American beliefs, they are looking for answers.
Comfort, right?
They are looking for comfort. They are looking for things that are going to ease their thoughts. They're going, I know, Brazilian, it's, if you go to a center, to a spiritist center, or to a terreiro, that we say in Brazil, with Umbanda and Candomblé, and I've been to many, and I'm going to think, if the pandemic helps us.
I know.
I want to study this. I want to not to start, but I want to continue studying this in the terreiros next semester. You are going to see millions of people there and looking for comfort for everything, for all kinds of problems. And I think this is something that is typical of Brazil, because there are many researches, and I'm not saying that I think. I'm a scholar, so I believe in science.
Fact. Yeah, you have the data to back up. Yes.
Yeah, I have data to show people. There is I think I can send you the link exactly because I have the thesis here in my computer somewhere. But there is a scholar from the Department of Psychology from USP, from the University of São Paulo, that's the most famous university here in Brazil, that her name is Fatima, if I'm not mistaken. And her thesis is like 10, 15 years old. She said that Brazilians, more than any other nationality, believe in the supernatural more than anybody.
That makes sense.
Okay, so it's a fact. There is a research. For example, I don't know exactly the numbers, but I can check and send you later. Because, for example, her survey, she asked the questions more or less like this. Have you had any kind of experience related to near-death experiences, dreams that came true, poltergeists, whatever? There were many items that she asked the person. And the answer, Fred, was like 89% of the people had.
So it's not as supernatural as it is, maybe more natural than supernatural.
I think the second country was Mexico.
That makes sense. If you watch Coco, then yes.
Yeah. And then the rest of the world. So Brazilians are connected to that. They are very curious.
So they're connected, would you say, to this kind of mysticism?
Exactly. And the most important thing that I write in my book, in my thesis, as you said, is that Jews here are inside this reality.
Right.
The secular Jews are living this reality here in São Paulo. Of course, I wasn't able to study the realities in Rio or in Bahia.
Brazil. Sure.
Because I am just one person, and the day has, like, the days are 24 hours long. So the Jews in Brazil and in São Paulo specifically, they are inserted in this reality. They are more than the things that they get, the information that they get from their neighbors, from from people all around them. It's like immersed.
What I'm hoping is to build a bridge for people that are watching that don't live in Brazil or don't even speak Portuguese and may have some connection to Judaism and are trying to build that bridge to what it means to be immersed in this mystical, supernatural environment that Brazilians are. Melting pot that is a lot, that includes Spiritism, but other religions as well. And I wonder if this could be a good segue for you to bring to us who the Rebbe Lubavitch represents to the Jews as far as mysticism goes.
Okay.
And is that maybe a good bridge?
Great. First of all, when we talk about mysticism in Judaism, we talk mainly about two things. We talk about Kabbalah and we talk about Hasidism. Hasidism. So mysticism in Judaism, these are the two branches that we scholars talk about when we study mysticism in Judaism. First of all, Kabbalah is something absolutely unknown to most of the people. It's not something that is sold everywhere as we are used to seeing, But I'm not going to talk about the history of Hasidism.
Sure.
It's like there are millions of books about it and there are many theories.
Right.
But this movement was a mystical movement that started in Europe around Poland and Russia in the 18th century with a specific rabbi that we can say that he was a kind of a healer.
He had kind of a medium, a psychic, perhaps.
A medium, a psychic, a healer. And he used to go from town to town, from village to village, like saying things to people, blessing them, turning, trees into fire, and so many things. Okay. What is his main legacy, if I can say so? Yeah. He put Judaism connected to the people, because people that used to study Judaism were just like scholars and rabbis and not people from poor people.
And mostly men, right?
Mostly men. Well, but at the time was mostly men as well, but not people that used to go to temple every day, He transformed Judaism into something simpler. He
Gotcha.
put Judaism into their lives as
Gotcha.
not something related to the upper people, you know?
Got it.
He made it simple, just to be absolutely fast.
Maybe less intellectual, more
less
practical.
intellectual and yes, less intellectual, exactly. And then there were one of the lines from this Hasidism was born in a city called Lubavitch, that is in Poland, Ukraine, it doesn't matter.
We'll Google it later.
Yeah, it's there. And then there was a line of rabbis that used to be because it finished. They used to be the leaders of these people.
So it's like a succession, like a legacy.
Exactly. So one died, and maybe it was just the son or one of, I don't know, a nephew or something. And then there were more like 12, I think, if I'm not mistaken, until 2000, until the beginning, 2000, no, until 1994. And then these rabbis, they were like little messiahs, you know what I mean?
Not really, but yeah, I'm sure you can elaborate.
Do you know a Messiah? Do you know the idea of the Messiah in Judaism? A person that is above good and evil, the person that is going to save everybody.
Like a saintly figure.
A saintly figure, exactly. They were like saint figures. And what was something very different, Freddy, is just like they are saints in Judaism. A religion that doesn't believe in saints. So look at the contradiction.
Right.
And so coming to the 20th century, there was this rabbi from this sect, from this story, that was called Menachem Mendel.
Okay.
That he was born in Europe, but before the war, he went to New York and he never left.
Brooklyn, right?
Brooklyn, exactly. Like half an hour from
down the road
here.
Yeah.
And then he built like and so he had many followers. And what he did was something extraordinary, because he received people, he talked to people, people like this, people that needed to be comforted. Or people that had problems or diseases, health issues in general, or people that came all over the world that wanted just to be near him.
Would you say he's the equivalent of a Chico Xavier in Judaism?
Exactly.
So he did a lot of charitable work and helped the community.
The same thing. And people, for example, there are many stories and many books in English, in Portuguese. It doesn't matter. The miracles of Rebbe, the miracles of the rabbi. It's important to say that rabbi in English, and when we say Rebbe, it's something that is like holier
than rabbi.
It's a different category. And in Yiddish, okay, this is the Yiddish word, but it's the same thing.
Got it.
And then the miracles. I have a book that is called "The Miracles and Wonders of the Lubavitcher Rebbe." The letters. There are many books about his letters. For example, I have many stories. One story that I can tell you that I remember now is that a family that had a daughter, and the daughter was like 14 years old, and she couldn't talk because she was mute and everything, but she went to many doctors and no doctors could solve anything because there was nothing wrong in her vocal cords, but she couldn't speak. And then she went to the Rebbe, and then he said to the family, "Just wait outside. I'm going to talk to her." And then after 15 minutes, she could talk.
So there might be some kind of spiritual intervention,
many stories like that.
Got it.
And his influence was like, he had an international influence.
That transcended Judaism. People who were not Jewish were
but in Brazil, but to be honest with you, in Brazil, the Jewish community, the Orthodox Jewish community, but even the secular ones, we always heard about him, his stories, his miracles, and people have his picture on the wall, his we say santinho in Portuguese, that we put inside the wallet. And it's something like it has never been like that in Judaism. It had never happened before, because we don't have images in our houses of people like saints, we don't believe in that. But he just changed everything.
And so he basically, after he passes away, there is, as I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, there is no successor to him, right?
No,
so
because
this
he didn't have
tradition
children.
ends.
He didn't have children. I think he had a nephew, if I'm not mistaken, but was not a successor, and people didn't want the other directors. I don't know even how to call them. And then, but if you ask the community, Fred, they are going to say that he didn't die.
His spirit lives on.
And no, they say that they use a word that they say that he's hidden.
Okay. Until such a time when he comes back along with the Messiah
exactly. Or he will be the Messiah.
I see, because I have heard that from people saying that he is the Messiah himself and he's going to come back and
wait for a certain moment, blah 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 blah, and he's hidden. He didn't die. Some people say that. In Portuguese, we say ocultou-se. There is a verb, the beautiful verb that
he's hidden, occult, camouflage.
Yeah.
So further notice. I wanted to go, Andrea, back to your friend Rachel and the book that the family published on 22 letters of Chico Xavier, which I had never heard the story until I read your book. And you put pieces of the letters in your book to supply, to show the research that Chico actually had a lot of expressions in Hebrew of traditions that even the parents who were there afterwards, they didn't know what it meant. They had to take the letters to the rabbi in São Paulo to, do you know what my son said here?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Or they even they read and they didn't know what meant, even some facts. I said, I don't understand what Roberto meant here, what Chico wrote. And then after a month, after a couple of weeks, I said, oh my God, I remember that, some things that were like impossible to say. Some prayers that we say in Judaism that are in Hebrew, of course. How could Chico Xavier know that, Freddy?
Right.
He was like he was almost illiterate.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that. And then he suddenly writes 22 letters full with information like that.
And in your work, in your research, did you ever receive a message from a spirit through a medium?
No.
Really?
Good question. Well, of course, during those 4 years and more of research and being part of the spiritist sessions with many mediums, with many psychics, of course I heard some things that were related to me. Of course, like Andrea, you are working on that. Just keep working. You are doing a really nice job. So the things that I've heard really encouraged me.
Nice.
It was not something like very personal, like in your life, it's blah, blah, blah. But always I had some words of encouragement.
Nice.
I don't know. There were many nice things, but I always had this kind of messages.
I'm curious, Andrea, what do you hope that your work accomplishes?
Nobody has ever...
The results of your work, what do you hope we would result?
Well, I have two answers. One is more academic and one is more personal, okay? Because every time a person asks me a question, not like this, Fred, but depending on the question that people ask when I am giving interviews or lectures or anything, sometimes I have to ask the person, are you asking the Andrea, the person here, the Jew that is talking to you, or are you asking Andrea, the scholar, PhD, blah, 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 blah. They're two different things. And to be a nice scientist and serious and researcher, Fred, you know that I don't put my opinion, I don't think about anything.
You have to be unbiased, yeah.
And when people say, what do you think about this? I don't think anything. I just believe that it's true, and then I put that, and it's science. And like people say, oh, I don't agree with your book. I said, not my problem. It's science.
It's science.
It's up to you
It's
if you
data.
believe or not. Oh,
Right.
I don't think it is correct. Oh,
But
what a pity.
Then the personal Andrea. Let's see.
Okay. One thing that Raquel told me, the sister of Roberto, a couple of years ago, she said that I have a kind of a mission to tell people that these kinds of beliefs, I don't know, that everything is possible. You don't have to face this as a taboo, you know? You can believe in everything that you want. Who is here the rabbi or who is God that is saying, no, you can't do that, right, or you can't do that. If it's something that makes you feel good, why not?
Right.
Do what your heart desires. I think that's the first thing. And the scholarly speaking, Fred, I think that we need more empiric studies like this in the academic world. What I mean is that Spiritism, and I think everybody here must know, I think, Spiritism is not something that is very serious in the academy. There are just a few works about it, theses and dissertations, few in relation to Judaism, to Christianity, to Buddhism, of course. And of course, if you can compare the time,
150 years.
Yeah, of course, it's something different. But when you talk about Spiritism in universities, they say, okay. It's like something that is not taken seriously.
Understand.
So I have a group of friends, for example, that we are talking, and we started talking like 2-3 months ago during this period that we are at home. Women that are studying Spiritism in an academic way.
That's fascinating.
Fascinating, and it's a group that I love, and we are so connected. There are, I think, 6 of us. I am the only one from São Paulo, and there are 2 from Rio Grande do Sul, 2 from Rio, 1 from Minas, and 1 from Goiás, I think. And everybody or has already published their thesis. Everybody's a PhD. I think there is just 1 of us that is like studying to get the PhD. So I think this is brilliant to talk about it in different environments, and because Brazil is such a rich country in relation to religion.
Yeah.
So you have to talk about Spiritism and new spiritualities and everything. And the academy must respect that.
Right. Especially here in the United States, there are so many foundations and nonprofit organizations that usually are established around groups of people that are grieving. And they will get together and study books like Survival of Consciousness or Life After Life, which are written by people that sometimes are scholars, sometimes are scientists that have compiled enough evidence from different religions, traditions to show that there is something afterwards.
Yes.
And then people will study these in the hopes that they will get their comfort from the loss of their loved ones. But it's really hard for anyone who's not from Brazil to get a glimpse and truly understand how deep this runs in Brazilian culture, in many ways because of people like Chico Xavier. I mean, there are thousands of other mediums and other practices that have allowed this tree to take firm roots in all of Brazilian society. But you have to single out a guy like Chico and his work, because it really was extraordinary. So I wonder if the US or Europe had a figure like that, like a Chico, whose mediumship, regardless of his religion, but his output was this compelling. If the academic world would not be like, whoa, who is this guy? Let me get close to it and understand him more. But perhaps because he's from Brazil, maybe there's not that much serious research that's dedicated to it.
There is no one like Chico Xavier. Nobody like Chico Xavier. I think that in Brazil, he was a personality that, independently of the religion that you believe, it doesn't matter if you are Jew or if you're a Christian, or if you're a Protestant, it doesn't matter. Chico was considered like a saint or a person, we say, that is above good and evil, you know?
Right.
And after Chico, I think there is nobody. Of course, there are some mediums, some psychics and everything, but no, after Chico, nobody. And there are some Brazilian stars in Spiritism, but I think they don't have the charisma. They I don't know. You can't compare, in my opinion.
In your research too, yeah.
In my research,
Well.
of course, during my research, Freddy, there were many people that talked about João de Deus, John of God.
Yes, another very big example, yeah. Which is interesting to mention, because he never declared himself a spiritist or a follower of any religion, but he happened to be a medium. And so there is a direct association with Spiritism because he's a medium, right?
Yeah, and the problem with John of God, he is a criminal.
Right, today.
Yeah. So I've just read a book that was released in March that a journalist wrote. It's a kind of a, I don't know, it's here. It's called A Casa. And he spent last year in Abadiânia, where John of God used to live, just to collect the number of victims and the crimes. And he wrote all the crimes. And so nobody's talking about him anymore, of course, because he molested women and all the things that he did. But I'm going to say something that may sound odd, but it's true. The religion, abilities, profession is not something related to moral and ethics.
Right.
You can be an excellent teacher, but you are completely, I don't know, it's not something connected. You can be such a, I don't know, I don't have words for that.
It's quite a controversial topic, and also one that is quite, it makes your head scratch.
Yes.
How is it that a person was able to accomplish so much in so many years, and the results are there to prove it? It wasn't fake. It wasn't a farce. It wasn't make-believe.
I believe in
thousands and thousands and thousands of people were healed. And then followed by, alongside that, this intimate world that totally doesn't correspond with the results, right? So that's a topic for another day, perhaps.
Yeah, no, and even there are many now,
right?
Brilliant doctors, and then there is a kind of many women come forward to say that he was a molester and he did this kind of things, but he was a brilliant doctor, but he was completely immoral. So it's something that is really, really hard. But maybe one thing doesn't affect the other. You know what I mean? Just to we have to be very careful with these words.
Right. I mean, for our audience here, the explanations that I have heard from people that seem to me to make most common sense in my understanding of Spiritism is that he had a natural ability as a very powerful medium. That came when he was born. He didn't have to go to school. He didn't have to get a PhD. It was part of his organic composition. And because it was such a powerful physical effects mediumship, it requires such a level of self-control, because you're dealing with some very strong energies, especially in the lower centers of force, that if you are not super, super, super disciplined in your self-control, it can drag you. And similar explanations are told in Hinduism and other Eastern religions about the same phenomenon, right? So I wonder if we can pivot from that back to Judaism outside of Brazil. And I'm curious to see what kind of response you get when you go to Israel or Europe or US and you talk about your work. How do people receive this connection you make between Judaism and Spiritism when they've never heard of Spiritism?
Never heard. I've been to many conferences in the US because there is an Association for Jewish Studies, AJS, and they have a conference every year in December And each year it's in a different city. So I've been to San Diego and Boston, and I don't know, I've been to 3 or 4. And I all the time I talk about this topic, and people are complete. And Israel, and I went to Israel in 2017. It was a conference. It was an international, a huge conference. People from all over the world to discuss Judaism. To be honest with you, there were 14 panels at the same time, like 5 days, 14 panels in every hour. So try to sum up.
A lot to digest.
A lot to digest. Every time I talk to these people, they are scholars. Yeah, they are fascinated. Absolutely fascinated, because they've never heard of something like that. Because they say, what is this? I don't believe that. And so, of course, as they are very well read and everything, they make the connections with the Mexican reality and some other things. I remember that the first time I went, I think it was, I don't remember, but then I met a friend of mine that now he's a friend of mine, that is Professor Justin from the University of Manitoba. And he studies mysticism and Hasidism there. He is a PhD there. And then he invited me next year to discuss with other professors. The name of the conference, inside the conference, was like the Hasidic Rebbe as Boundary Crosser. And then everybody, there were like 6 of us, we brought our examples from different countries to talk about the Rebbes. And I talked about the Lubavitcher Rebbe, of course, and Chico Xavier as well, as religious figures, religious icons that made the difference, and that they crossed boundaries. They crossed religious boundaries. So they were very interested in that.
I think something that's also fascinating about Chico's legacy, for example, is that not only did he cross religious boundaries, but he crossed civil boundaries, because there are legal cases in Brazil where the evidence presented to the court came from his letters channeled that were given to him by spirits. And the evidence was so compelling. Yeah, right?
Yeah, the book. The book is somewhere here,
somewhere there,
but it's somewhere around me. But there is a book from, I think, professors. I don't know if it's the name of the university, but their PhD thesis was about exactly this. They took like 30, 40 letters, and they tried to connect these letters and tell the absolute truth and come up with numbers. But Fred, let me be honest with you and tell you something. I don't do this kind of work. I am a scientist, and the name of the department that I've been is religious studies, religious science.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my job to say this is true, this is not true.
Yeah, totally understand.
Okay,
no, but before the evidence presented to a court, I mean, when you go into a department of law, it makes people scratch their hands and think twice. Regardless of your own personal convictions on how you approach it. But I don't know if your community of scholars and researchers around the world have other studies that I would love that maybe you can point to for me to look of other mediums in other countries where they were able to bring evidence before a court in order to absolve a defendant that was sentenced to jail for killing somebody. And that somebody who was killed comes through a medium and says, listen, by the way, it was an accident. He really didn't mean it. And here's X, Y, Z, T, J, Delta, Gamma, Alpha, Beta of evidence where the court's like, okay, we're not here to discuss whether there's afterlife, whether the dead can communicate with the living, but we have to consider this evidence. This is overwhelming.
This is fantastic. No, it's absolutely fantastic. I've never heard of anything outside Brazil in relation to that. I've never heard. So I don't know.
Well, I would hope, Andrea, that this pandemic ends soon, because I would love to. I know you're going to come to New York as soon as this is over, because this city lives in your heart. So when you do come, please let me know. Because I would love for us to organize a little get-together, a lecture, a presentation, and bring these people from different sectors of society around the fire like we do here in person, and have you shared the insights you gained in your research, because I think you're just scraping the iceberg, the surface, into something that's such a beautiful universe of religions coming together and people drinking from different fountains, but not changing who they are fundamentally, and just having that be a source of unity and not division.
Exactly. That's fantastic. Yeah. I have a very good friend of mine that lives in New York. Well, I have so many friends in New York, but I have a very good friend of mine that is called Alex Merkin. And Alex he studies, how can I explain? Jews, spirits of Jews in Candomblé and in Umbanda.
Wow. Alex, if you're listening to us,
Alex,
or if you're not, we're going to ask for a
it.
medium to get this message to you somehow.
Yeah, Alex because I talk to him very often, and then like half an hour before we started here, he asked if it was going to be recorded, because he wanted to watch. He couldn't watch right now, but he was going to watch later, and I said, of course. And he came to Brazil last year, and we had a talk. We talked, like both of us, a lecture at the club here at Hebraica. And it was a very beautiful experience, and he's awesome. You're going to love to talk to him.
Here's hoping in the universe that we make a commitment on the air that when you come to New York, we'll do something together.
Yeah.
And also, if Raquel is listening to us, I'd love to get to know her and see if maybe she would like to participate in a Spirit Reflections talk, just describing her experience and her family's experience with Chico Xavier in those years that they went there and received 22 letters from her son or her grandson? Her brother. Okay, her brother. Awesome.
I think she's going to love it, and you're going to love her, because she's fantastic.
Beautiful. Well, I want to thank you so much again for your time. You received a hug from New York.
Thank you.
Beautiful. And here's hoping that we get together in person soon. And if you guys have any questions that you wanted to ask Andrea, please type your comments now or send us a message at info@spiritreflections.org, and we'll make sure that it gets to Andrea. Sure. So thank you so much again, Andrea.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Stay healthy there.
Stay safe. Thank you so much, Freddy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.